we want to make sure we record this because 22 was a great year, y'all. We have so much to share with you this evening about how the Matriots did this year, some of our great success stories, some of the real challenges our women and our voters faced here in Ohio. And we are so thankful, as always, that you're here with us. If I mentioned before, but if you're new to the group here, feel free to put something in the chat and let us know what you're thinking about. We've got a really fast moving presentation tonight because we have so much information to share with you. We want to detail what happened in the election, some of the data, some of the insight that we have. We want our candidates to be able to share their stories. It has been a year like none other, and we have fantastic candidates here with us this evening and a wonderful panelist to help moderator to help lead that conversation. I'll introduce them in a little bit, but I have I'm Emily Shriver. I'm the CEO of the Matriots. I should start there. And I want to introduce you to our very first speaker this evening. This year, we celebrate the 5th year of endorsements for the Matriots. We have endorsed 5 classes for general election here at the Matriots, making a difference in Ohio, changing what Ohio's elected offices look like, and especially impacting the community of women who choose to be candidates and choose to run for office, whether they become electeds or not. And in 2017, we started with an idea and an idea that grew into where we are today to be able to endorse this class and classes in the future of candidates. We asked this evening that Sally Crane Cox, one of our founding members, join us this evening and talk a little bit about where we were, where we are today, and just celebrate the 5th year of our endorsements. So Sally, can I pass to you to tee us off this evening?
Thank you, Emily. Sure can. I'm thrilled to be here today and to be part of this celebration. We 6 women who started the organization just with this crazy concept could not be more proud of all of you women who've stepped up to run for office. Many of you were in that original class of 2018 candidates. And although my screen is reduced, there's Jessica Miranda, and I think I saw Allison. So yeah, it's great to be back here again and to see all of you. And I'm going to keep my remarks brief. As Emily mentioned, this is 5 years of making endorsements in both primary and general elections. So lots and lots of races. And Kim is going to give us more detail about that, the stats and so on. But I think it's been over 400 races that we've endorsed in. So lots to be proud of. I'll keep it short. If you have a glass of wine, a glass of water, a cup of coffee, let's raise it up and toast to the Matriots. Thank you.
Cheers.
So now I'm going to hand off to Kim Crowfoot-Swade, who has, for the last couple of years, I believe, been handling our endorsement process. She's done a fabulous job. Kim came to us from the beginning, from early days when they first moved here to town, and joined as a founding member, and then helped us with our strategic plan. And as mentioned, has for the last couple of years been helping us manage our endorsement process, which has just gotten bigger and bigger. So off to Kim Crowfoot-Swade. Thank you.
Sally, thank you so much. So I know that the most important thing that we have happening today is actually speaking to the candidates. So I'm going to hold myself to a 10-minute overview of what happened during the 2022 election from the Matriots perspective. So my first question is, Abby, please indicate to me if the screen share is not working. I have a 10-minute presentation that will give a nice overview of the path to more Ohio women in politics, which was the original dream with Sally and the other marchers. So starting with what the Matriots do, we do outreach, endorsement, and support. All of you here on this call know that, but just a reminder, the outreach we do at the beginning of an election cycle, where we reach out to all 88 boards of elections. They each have individual filings. We'll actually go out and find all the women running for office, and then we'll reach out to them individually with direct mail. We reach out to county party chairs of all parties, both parties, women's organizations, leadership outreach, social media outreach, and then we engage in endorsement where we individually research each candidate. We are looking for a values match and their campaign viability. We do individual interviews for every candidate across the state with multiple interviewers. And then we are focused on early money, early financial support for the primary, which not a lot of PACs will do, and early financial support in the general. So in 2022, what was the enormity of this mission? 2022 was, 325 seats were up in the Ohio House. Of those 325 seats, 187 were women. So we have about 42% female candidates. But I think the exciting news for me, as I was looking through this, is that the Matriots-endorsed candidates, we endorsed 33% of those candidates that were endorsed this year between Ohio House, statewide, and county positions, not talking about judicial below the Supreme Court. And I want to also remind everyone that, even though it was all about the OGA this year, the House and the Senate and statewide, we also had county politics on the ballot, and county matters. And the reason county matters for us at the Matriots, we endorse from school board on up or from governor on down. We'll endorse at every level except for certain judicial races as of now. And that's important because at the county level and the local level, we tend to have more women running. So at the county level this year, we had 48% candidates running were women. And that's important because if we're able to get more women running for office at levels that are local, that's building a bench for women to run for other levels of office. And as a reminder, at the end of this presentation, we'll kind of talk about the fact that what's up next year. Next year's all local. Next year's a local year. So what happened this year? We had, unfortunately, a mess. We had we had two primaries. That was surprising. So because of the redistricting debacle, we had the May 4th primary and then a surprise August 2nd primary. It caused, we'll hear from the candidates. I'm not going to go through too much detail here, except to say that this caused some real problems in terms of fundraising and campaign strategy being able to be deployed. We endorsed 23 candidates. Of those 23, 18 won. So we did have 78% of our endorsed candidates win, which was exciting. But this was a very, very tough primary. And in particular, those candidates who were in the OGA who were pushed into the unexpected August 2nd primary had very little time after that primary to raise funds and put together their campaign for the general, unfortunately. For the general election, we had 60 candidates endorsed, technically 61. One had to withdraw due to the redistricting. I think a couple interesting things here is that 27 of those candidates were previously Matriots endorsed, and 16 of those won. So 60% of our previously Matriots endorsed candidates won. We had 19 first-time candidates running, and 2 of them won. It's hard to win as a first-time candidate, and they both won for open seats. And that's a theme that you're going to hear from me. Well, you heard it last year too. Open seats are incredibly important. We gave $167,000 in funds for the general. But if you look at who won, we had 88% of our, sorry, I just have to move the highlight. 88% of our incumbents won, 53% of our open seats won, and 0% of our challengers won this year. And that it's very hard to win as a challenger. And again, that's a theme that we'll talk about. In terms of where our winners came from, statewide, it was a rough year statewide. We will talk about this. That was just heartbreaking for us. 5 statewide candidates that we were really behind. At the House level, 43% won. At the Senate, 50% won, and at the county, 44% won. So I think we have a group of candidates who fought hard, but I want to say that they're part of the reason everyone fought hard. Part of the reason these candidates won had a lot more to do with the seats they were running for, their previous experience, and a little bit redistricting, and we'll talk about that. Where did we end up? So I thought, let's take a snapshot. Where are we on November 7th, just before the election? The OGA is 30% women. And starting January 1st of 2023, the OGA is going to be 29% women. So there's a slight decrease from now. Again, November 7th, there were some things that happened over the course of 2021 that ended up shifting where we kind of went into the that OGA, but it's a slight decrease. I want to talk about why that happened, though, briefly. And one is that people move. Catherine Ingram and Paula Hicks Hudson both won open Senate seats. So they're moving from the House into the Senate, which is incredible. So we actually have a gain of 2 seats in the Senate. In the House, the redistricting caused a whole lot of shifting, a whole lot of redrawing, candidates who were pushed out of districts that they thought they would be running in. They had to wait to see whether they would actually run. We had candidates who applied and then withdrew because they did not want to run against another candidate they thought was fantastic in office, another woman. Boggs, Kristen Boggs, Ingram, Hicks Hudson, Kelly Sobecki, all candidates who we had endorsed previously who were sitting in the House, moved to different races, judicial, county level, Senate, county, another county level with Kelly. So we lost a lot of women in the House that we had previously endorsed. If we look at what happened statewide, candidates are going to talk about this, so I'm not going to go bullet point by bullet point. But what I will say is that it was a very expensive year. A lot of money was spent, particularly in the Supreme Court races. The ad spend in these races alone topped 10 million, making it the 3rd highest ad spend in the country for Supreme Court cases. And our candidates were significantly outraised. It wasn't the only story there, but it was a story. And we all know what happened statewide at the for the governorship, and Nan Whaley was significantly outspent in that race. In Northeast Ohio, very exciting. Of 18 endorsed, we have 10 elected candidates, so 55%, and some big wins. Lauren McNally won 40%, running against 2 independents for an open seat. Very exciting. So 50% of the open seats we've endorsed 4, and 2 were elected. Bride Rose Sweeney won 55% in a redistricted space that had a lot less support for her. And then we're very excited about Nikki Antonio, Juanita Brent, and Tavia Golansky winning easily. But I want to talk about our challengers who almost won. I want to highlight the fact that Rita Darrow, Kathleen Clyde, and Pat Getz, they almost won. I want to just think about what this map would look like had any of those 3 pulled just 1 or 2 percentage points more. And these were challengers as well. So all 3 of these candidates ran incredible races, and I look forward to seeing them again. Also, the story of appointments. Appointments matter, and we'll hear about that later in the presentation. Northwest Ohio, we had 33% win. None of our challengers won, but we did have Michelle Grimm winning for House District 43, moving from Toledo City Council, and then Lisa Sobecki, who won for Lucas County Commissioner. A very experienced candidate, but she moved from the House to Lucas County, and she had a tough primary against an incumbent, and we significantly helped there. And look at these 2 candidates, Nancy Larson, Erica White, both lost with only a small percentage. So I think the story for the Matriots this year is also, we had quite a few candidates who in tough races almost won. They weren't blown out of the water. A lot of our candidates did really well. If we're looking at Central Ohio, we had an incredible win rate for our incumbents, 83%, 6 endorsed, 5 elected, which is exciting. Redistricting brings some wins. So Manira Abdullahi, Latina Humphrey, Allison Russo, they had no opponents. So they were packed into districts that worked for them. Dr. Beth Liston won easily, which was great. But we had some seats that, sorry, Tina, I have the wrong number in there. I'm sorry. That was a mistake on my part. So Mary Lightbody won by 55%. Redistricting made her seat far more difficult. And Tina Maharath lost by, Tina, I think that's 47%.
Yes, or yeah, I earned 47% of the vote.
47% of the vote. So it's not 3, it's 47%. And that was my very fat finger typing and not going back and reading it one more time. So I'm sorry about that, Tina. Mea culpa. Anita Somani won by 56%. And again, appointments. Erica Crawley won as an incumbent, but she's an incumbent because she was appointed to that seat. And appointments are a way that a lot of women make their way through. And then finally, Southern Ohio. 36% of our women endorsed their one. 83 of the incumbents won. The story, you know, again, if we can get women running as incumbents, they frequently are winners. Well, everyone's a winner, but they frequently win their race. We'll hear from Tonya Conrath and Rachel Baker and Jessica Miranda. So I'm not going to go through the details there. I will simply say that Carolyn Rice losing as Montgomery County Commissioner, potentially, it's right now too close to call. She's down by 1,030 votes. That's a hard potential loss that should not have happened. So, you know, a little soul searching around what happened in that race would be important in Montgomery County because we've endorsed her previously. We're big fans of Carolyn Rice. So finally, what do we do so that these candidates win? That's the overview of what happened. What do? We do a lot of ongoing support. So we have personal web pages and bios. We have endorsed graphics. We have access to the Matriots cohort. We do digital promotion via regional slate cards and printed slate cards. We have a Be Strong daily motivation. We do outreach to members to get them to volunteer. And we have a regional Get Out the Vote slate card that we sent out in the mail that we think was effective. And I think we were effective, not just giving candidates money, but also supporting them. And that's the story of this year. And it is 5:48. So I came close.
Impressive, Kim. That was impressive. I mean, it was really, it was a fire hose of information, and it's something that we have been, we've really been deeply digesting in the last week, you know, and I want to thank Kim for her leadership on the endorsement committee, with the endorsement committee with Valerie Lemmy Thomas, who is the chair of our endorsement committee and on our steering committee for the organization. And I'm also going to lift up our fantastic interns who looked at the statewide data and drilled down on statewide data for us. So Madeline Piles and Maddie Robinson from Baldwin Wallace, who really helped with the creation of this presentation tonight. You know, it takes a village, it takes a county, it takes a state to do what we do, and I think our candidates also feel the same way, that you all are there to support them and to support us, and we can't do any of this without just a large group. And thinking of that large group, we have some of our candidates here with us tonight for a conversation, talking about stories and issues that they faced personally on the campaign trail this year. As I mentioned earlier on, this was a year that looked like none other, with the redistricting, the double primaries, the lack of knowledge around where exactly you were running, when you were running, who you were talking to, whether you were talking to constituents, whether you were talking to neighbors, and our women really persevered this year. And there was, to me, it looked like, and it looks like data is coming in as well about the statewide races, just the extreme dollars that came in from out of state, from in state, that were really trying to influence the elections here. So I want to get right to these stories. I'm going to just do a quick introduction of the wonderful women you're going to hear from tonight, because you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from them. And we first will have Justice Jennifer Brunner, who ran this year for State Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. She is a member currently on the Supreme Court. She has been a dedicated woman running for office here in the state of Ohio and representing our values in the state of Ohio since at least 2006. And she could probably tell you even further back than that. But she has been a Matriots-endorsed candidate before, and we are just so thankful that she is here with us this evening. This year, she, as Kim mentioned, she lost her race by just a little bit. And so I wanted her to talk with you about what some of the challenges are there. We have Rachel Baker, who was endorsed in 2021 for school board, and then she came right back around and successfully ran for House District 17 here in House District 27, excuse me, in Southwest Ohio. And she has been just a real champion for Southwest Ohio, for her community through some real challenging times. And she'll chat with us about that. Troy Greenfield up in Northeast Ohio for House District 17. What a challenging redistricted space House District 17 was. While she was unsuccessful, she has just some of the best attitude about the work that she's doing in her community. And I'm excited for her to get to tell you about that. We have Rep Miranda here. You all have seen Rep Miranda before. She's been endorsed by us 3 times, so she's not a newcomer to our Zoomosphere, but she is serving as the minority whip in the Ohio House, serving in House District 28, reelected this year. But I'm going to just go ahead and say in a surprisingly challenging race due to redistricting and due to some of the other factors that lead to just this year being one of the hardest years to run. We have our dear friend, Senator Maharath, who popped in to say what the race looked like for Senate District 3. That was another district that was redistricted and shifted and led to Tina being unsuccessful in this year. But when I'm out in East Columbus, on the east side of Columbus, anywhere near Reynoldsburg or Pickerington, hanging out at festivals or at events, the face I always see in the crowd is Senator Maharath. So I'm excited for you to get to hear from her today as well. We have Tonya Conrath from down in Southeast Ohio. She is our single Southeast Ohio candidate this year. And she, if there's a person who faced the challenge this year of the delays and redistricting issues, it is our friend Tonya Conrath. She picked up the mantle in Athens and ran with it with just a few weeks before our election, and she'll be talking to you about that for House District 94. Dr. Anita Somani missed the early sign-on to become a candidate because she didn't know that she was going to run for office. And then she's going to be here to tell you a little bit about the challenges that she faced getting on the ballot all the way up to the Supreme Court, and really recognizing the need for there to be an OBGYN in the Ohio legislature. And I can tell you folks, now we have one. So Dr. Anita Somani is here with us tonight. And definitely not least is Erica Crawley. So our friend Commissioner Crawley is here tonight to talk with us a little bit about appointments and her role in getting elected to county commissioner. You know, this is a fantastic group. I'm going to pass off to Dr. Tina Pierce, PhD, who is a member of the Columbus City School Board here in the Columbus City School District, and a previously endorsed Matriots candidate, just a real great friend of the Matriots and a leader in the political community. So Dr. Pierce, if I could turn over to you to moderate this group.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. It is such an honor and pleasure to be here to continue this great work to increase the number of elected women that we have throughout the state of Ohio. So all folks' voices are heard and at the table, valued and appreciated. So if we could, before we start, everyone knows how to use their reactions. Let's just give the Matriots a huge round of applause. Use your reactions. Let's see those signs going up on your Hollywood squares, as some people call them, for their 5 years of tremendous impact and success. So again, thank you. We are going to start with Justice Brunner, and she already has the conversation going in the chat box, right? So we know you had a tremendous race. Can you talk about the role that low voter turnout, as well as Ohio money versus outside money, played in this campaign?
Yes, thank you. I think there are other factors that I would want to touch on too, but we'll stick to the two things that you talked about. So as I was watching the returns come in election night, I had the luxury of having my own map from 2020 where I won 40 counties to actually set up my targeting for how we did our sign distribution, how we did our digital media, where we put our billboards, and where we decided to do our television. And I had been able to lower the margins in the rural areas in 2020. Now, mind you, 2020 was all COVID all the time from March on. And so it was a race where, as a statewide candidate, I didn't go anywhere, but yet I still had to run statewide. So, things started opening up probably sometime in April, where you could safely plan on going to a location and they wouldn't, say, oh, sorry, we're gonna have to cancel our dinner because so-and-so got COVID. So you had less time to actually physically be at those counties. And so what I did at the end of my race was to do an Ohio Justice tour, and I had covered my Yukon completely obnoxiously with my pictures all over it, even on the ceiling. And then we rented a U-Haul trailer, and Terry, Marilyn, and I, as the three together, went essentially put our pictures on it, and we put all of our material in it, and we hit as many rural areas as counties as we could. And the reason I'm saying that is because we were counting on the cities to turn out pretty well in this election because of the Dobbs decision, because of the importance of the Supreme Court. And we were encouraged when we saw higher numbers of people voting early and by absentee than it happened in 2018. But overall, the turnout was poorer in 2022 than it was in 2018. And that was mostly because of the cities. So when you combine that then with very low performance at the top of the ticket, with about 63-64% voting for the current Governor DeWine, plus the legislature putting party affiliation on the ballot for the first time after I won in 2020, that 60% of people who voted for DeWine. There were some ticket splitters because I did outperform Nan Whaley by more than 200,000 votes. And in fact, all the statewide Democratic candidates outperformed in the governor's race. And that may be to so much money attacking Nan, but maybe what they did in doing that was to try to drive everything down for the entire ticket by attacking the person at the top. And Tim Ryan did better, but he had bazillions of millions of dollars. So, I raised more money than any Democratic Supreme Court candidate has ever raised in the history of Ohio. It was close to 1.3 million. And there were negative ads running against the three of us, for about 4 weeks. I wasn't sure that the negative ads were all that effective, because from the polling we've seen, the crime issue wasn't as big, but I really think the turnout had a lot to do with it. While my opponent raised more money and spent more money than I did, where that really played out was in television time. I bought about $500,000 worth of TV time. I think she bought close to $1 million. The independent expenditure side for the Democrats for the Supreme Court only was $10 million. I'm not sure. I have not had a debrief to know how that was exactly spent, but I do know that there were not ads run specifically against my opponent, because apparently the polling they had was that it wasn't as effective as if they ran them against the two Pats, Pat DeWine and Pat Fisher. So, there was quite a bit of money spent on the Democratic side, not the same amount of party support, not by far, that I received in 2020. But, overall, looking at the big picture, I had certain rural counties that I knew if I just lowered my margin and did well in the cities, that I could bring it in 50% plus one, which is what you have to do in a 2-person race. But when it was the party affiliation that really killed things, because when I started seeing, the smaller counties come in first, smaller populated counties come in first. And when I started seeing these counties come in at 80-20, 75-25, and I'm thinking if I got 30%, when normally I got in 2020, I got in 45% in a lot of rural counties. I was counting on the cities to come in and then looking at the votes that were left and pretty much just guesstimating where I'd come out with the number of votes from the large counties. I knew when I added it up with my calculator that night that I couldn't reach the number that Sharon Kennedy was already at. So I literally called Chief O'Connor and said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to hold the seat. And then called Sharon and conceded, which is the decent thing to do. Because that did not happen to me in 2020. In 2020, I kept thinking, did I win? I don't know. I didn't hear from her. And that's the one thing that I think we as female candidates can definitely do is, lose with grace, and treat a person the way that we would want to be treated, and set an example for other people too. So, on the money piece, I think, what I want to say is that I have had the philosophy, since I lost a Senate race in 2010, that, a good ground game is going to get you really far. And if you can spend your money kind of like a fountain that in layers, where you're reaching people in a way that they like to be reached, and you can actually reach them with your message, you don't have to spend as much money that as if somebody who's doing a geyser like Old Faithful, hoping that, putting it all into TV and hoping that it's all, that it's going to hit, because people are just not getting their media from the same places as before. So, touching on those, there are a lot of other factors that it's, I'll say one more thing, that if you win an election, there is no one thing you can point to that caused you to win. It is this confluence of efforts from a variety of places. And if you lose an election, it's no one cause either. It's again, this confluence of deficits that came together in such a way that caused you to fall short. But whether you win or you lose, it's how you ran your campaign. And, knowing, for me, I debated whether I would do this Ohio Justice Tour at the end of the campaign. I mean, 60 counties in 13 days is a lot. I blew out the transmission on my Yukon by the end, because when you pull that trailer through Lawrence County, that is not easy. But you want to be able to say at the end of a race that you did everything you possibly could so that you have no regrets. And I have no regrets. And fortunately, I'm still on the Supreme Court, and I'm pretty good at making good trouble. So we'll be okay.
Justice Brunner, I can't thank you enough for all that information that you shared. And let me tell you, you teed it up perfectly for our next speaker, when you indicated that, again, it's a confluence of things that come together that can impact whether you win or you lose a campaign. So Representative Baker, you actually took one of those confluences that impacted your experience as a first-time candidate to ignite your next race. So how did your experience as a candidate in the last election influence this race? Specifically, how did you maintain your base of support from your last campaign to ignite your success in a very tough primary this year?
That is a great question. And I wrote down from Justice Brunner, there's not one thing, and that's the takeaway. And I think for me, a big learning in this process, I'm a very analytical person, and I like to get feedback and adjust my strategy. And, and there isn't that one thing to do, to know that you're going to make it or not. So my first campaign was for school board, and you guys were super supportive of that, and I appreciated everything. In that race, I got a big base of really local support. And I feel like we ran a good campaign. I feel like we used the same strategy I used this time, but it was unsuccessful. Really, I think the biggest reason in that school board race was that we had 10 candidates for 4 spots. I mean, it just was a numbers game. And, I honestly don't think I would have done anything different in that race. I think that race actually led to this success. And so remembering that, while there's big wins and losses, there's incremental wins all the time. And so, immediately after that school board race, we saw in our local district a very extreme school board be sworn in, and they immediately started enacting what they said in their campaign, made their campaign promises. And so our community got to see what it's like when not the right person is, or not the right people are elected into a position of power. And people really felt the immediate impact of this extremism. And so my base was just as motivated to like, what can we do now for our schools? And not only that, but bipartisan support that said, well, I didn't think it would be this bad when they got in, and so our base only increased. And so that was really what brought me to run was, people saying, what do we do now? We have this big group of motivated people that want change, and it's not, oh, well, we lost. I mean, the fight is always the fight. We just need to figure out a different strategy, and we were motivated. So went on to this race. I had a competitive primary, which thank you for being one of the only organizations that would support in a primary. It was a game changer for me. There were 2 organizations that really came through with early support in my primary. And I definitely could not have gotten through without that support. And I don't believe, honestly, that our district would have flipped without a woman flipping it. And so I think ultimately what you did and what one other group did flipped the seat, because we had the resources to make it through that primary. And so what was great was for this group of volunteers that had never gotten involved until that school board race and we lost, was then we won a primary. And so that was like a boost of energy to that group that was like, oh, we're going to win this whole thing, And so I think those little incremental wins and, even losses are a win. I mean, the loss from the school board engaged the community, taught me how to run a campaign, it's all, and even looking at my state house race, if I look back at what Christine Fisher, Sarah Bitter did in the terms before me, each time incrementally moving us closer to flipping the district. So I think a lot of attention gets put on like you won or your loss, understandably, but it's accumulation of the incremental change we made in this district over time, and redistricting, and an open seat, and it's like the perfect storm to make it happen. And so really, I think my school board race only ignited all of this, and that loss was kind of needed for people to say, this isn't going to be easy. We need to like buckle down and win. And as hard as that August primary was, as far as fundraising and getting full Dem support in my race, it actually was perfect for me because of the regeneration of our base. I think if we would have started in May, the May primary, and then had until November, I think people would have gotten tired. But instead we had, this August big party that numbers came through. We did what we said we were going to do. We did it, decisively. It was obvious. There was no question about who won that. And it motivated everybody to like take a weekend off, and then we're going again to November. And so I think, actually, as chaotic as it was for lots of places, and it added challenges, it also added benefits for my campaign, because these were people who'd never been involved and had never won and had never had this feeling. And so we got it, they got the bug, and we were all like, my favorite story is one of my friends who has 3 little boys. And so after the election, me and 12 of my friends all rented a house for the weekend, and they were my biggest volunteers, and we drank wine and stayed in pajamas. And she said that she got her 3-year-old up and was like, come on, we got to get dressed. And he said, what are we doing? Knocking doors? And I'm like, you're a good mom. Like, and she's like, never would I think my kid would say, are we going to knock doors? But that's what we've started. And so we need to keep it. And so what I'm challenged to think about next is, that this doesn't start again in a year and a half. You know, we need to keep this momentum, keep finding small incremental wins that are attainable. And, you know, some challenges we won't win, but we need to sprinkle wins in there to keep this base engaged and keep progressing. So thank you guys so much for all of your help and support. It was definitely a game changer for my campaign.
Thank you so much for that. I tell you what, that story of knocking doors is so significant because it really aligns with the fact that it is a numbers game and numbers are important, as Justice Brunner indicated. You have to be able to know that win count, and you have to be able to know how many voters you need to engage and pull in close like you did to keep them excited with those incremental wins. And we know in this election cycle that redrawn maps and our redistricting process impacted our numbers game, impacted how we were able to engage voters, our campaign and fundraising strategy. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to listen to the story from Representative Miranda. If you could talk about the redrawn maps and what they meant. This was a tough race for you as an incumbent with name recognition. Can you talk about the benefits of having an adaptive infrastructure, one which allowed you to pivot to engage voters who did not recognize your name and were unfamiliar with your work and advocacy?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pierce, and thank you to the Matriots and everyone on this call for supporting amazing female candidates. You know, redistricting is hard. No one really prepared those of us for it, you know, when we first ran our butts off to win these seats. And so it's one of those things that you just kind of have to live through to realize what the full impact is getting ready to be. And I think, you know, with everything that has happened this year with the Ohio redistricting debacle, we have seen what that is doing to our state and will continue to do to our state, because unfortunately it's not something I can be very optimistic about, because it's going to get worse, unfortunately. So, you know, when you speak out against the extremist policies in the state house, and when you're loud about the things that the supermajority is doing that is literally harming our families and us directly, you know, they try to cheat and remove you from your seat, right? So in my district, they took away 1% of our Democratic voters, which is significant since I initially flipped this seat by 0.01%. So when you talk about it in those kinds of numbers and get down to the nitty-gritty parts of the data, you realize how significant this is and how they really have this down to a science, right? Where they know where to pick apart votes, they know where to split apart, you know, certain areas of your district to penetrate where they're trying, you know, where they're aiming, right? So all that to say, my team understood the challenge we faced, right? We've been through this before, where we ran in this district in 2018, where no one believed it could be flipped. So we knocked on every Democrat's door to turn them out to vote. And we did months and months of persuasion canvassing where we explained the issues to folks. We were just real upfront and honest with them. And we met people where they are, because one of my greatest mentors has always told me since I began my journey on my local school board, you have to meet people where they are. So we go everywhere. We go to community events, we go to churches, we go to barbershops, we go everywhere we can go where we can talk to people to engage them, because everyone has such busy lives, they're not paying attention to what's going on at the State House, right? So we literally have to meet them where they are and be loud about it. So basically, the magic answer is to knock on doors and to aggressively write postcards every Friday to all of those doors that you've knocked on, handwritten postcards, and honest conversations, right, with people. It's the key to winning competitive districts like mine. I truly, truly believe that. And, you know, we knocked on nearly 50,000 doors, which is incredible for my team and I. Just to put that into perspective for folks, that's half of my district population. So that is, I mean, it's just a Herculean effort every time, and we never back down from what it takes to keep this seat. So thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for the Matriots, for everything you do and for keeping folks engaged after the election cycle. That is just as important as during the election cycle. So thank you so much for being a strong, strong force in Ohio that we women candidates can count on for support.
And thank you so much, Representative Miranda, for that Herculean effort and getting that win for all of us. We want to now go over to Representative Greenfield, who also had a Herculean effort. Your campaign too was impacted by redistricting map process. How did that process impact your campaign strategy? Oh, you're muted.
Got it.
There we go.
Patriot support. I really appreciate it. It was instrumental in my campaign, especially since I got a late start. Due to redistricting in my district, which was District 17, I was not, I didn't start campaigning or formulating or putting together my team until July. So during July, I put together my team. I was graciously able to garner the support of the Matriots and receive a campaign donation, which was outstanding because it really helped me start off my campaign with creating my first door hanger and handout. And then after the primary in August, that first weekend, it was on. We started knocking on doors and engaging with voters and dropping off campaign door hangers and introducing myself to my district. This is my first time running in a statewide for a statewide office. And I so appreciated all of the support that I received from the Matriots and so many other community groups in my district. And that gave me the momentum and the support to move forward with my campaign. We were able to knock on doors of 18,000 voters in my district of 17. And just as the previous Matriots-endorsed candidates spoke about, knocking on doors and having that face-to-face engagement, I feel was the most instrumental part of my campaign. Our targeted voter was between 40 to 70% likely to turn out to vote. And then also they were pro-choice in their data that was gathered through the Democratic Party through our Vote Builder database. So we targeted those voters specifically because they were persuadable with Roe v. Wade being overturned and women's rights to privacy and reproductive medical care being in jeopardy with this Ohio legislature, and also because of the candidate I was running against. We were able to knock on 18,000 doors with my campaign over a 3-month period. I was able to raise $53,000 over a 3-month period. I was able to send out 3 mailers to my win number of voters, which was 28,297. And then I was also able to mail out 7,500 postcards. All of these factors were so vital and so important to the success of my race. And I say my race was a success because I was able to garner 44.7% of the votes against a 20-year incumbent who had the support of every institutional union in Cuyahoga County. And I had none of that union support, none of those union dollars, none of those big dollar donations. He had $800,000 of campaign money to run his race. So as Justice Brunner said, It's not about how much money you have. It's about what you do to effectively reach voters and talk to voters. And I feel like my campaign effectively did that through our efforts of knocking on doors, sending out just 3 mailers, not 10, and then also sending out a text message just before elections. And then we also sent out postcards. And the redistricting for my district, it was actually leaning Democrat for my district. It was a 51%. However, I still did not get the voter support that my incumbent candidate received. But I think that in itself is related to his connection with the unions and how they gave him all of their support. And then I did not receive any support from my own party. And so I think those two things definitely hindered my ability to really effectively reach enough voters to win this seat. But it was a winnable seat had I had that additional support, I do believe.
You know, thank you so much for that. And for, as you said, hitting the ground running. Specifically, you said it was on. And
it was on.
It was on. We were ready for it, right? And so as we continue this panel, then we have another great panelist who I think took the similar approach as you. It was on. And so Senator Maharath, as you think about redistricting and how difficult it was impacting many campaigns, creating uncertainty, and then compressing the actual campaign into a shorter time frame. What were a few of the significant challenges you faced as, again, you got out there and said, it is on? What were some of those challenges that you faced as a result of that compressed time frame?
Thank you for that question, Dr. And thank you again, Matrix, for all your support. It definitely uplifted me every single day to read those emails I was getting, to try to stay grounded and just keep my head up high. But gosh, just like every person on the call today, I was just so damaged from gerrymandering. It significantly impacted me, although I was leaning Democrat, but it's just the thing was we weren't supposed to be in the position that we were supposed to be in. So with that compressed time frame, I had to do what I could do, which was to get out there and talk to voters. My team and I knocked on over 67,000 doors. We phone banked over 3,000 people. We marched in tons of parades, attended several community events, but we still came up short because we just don't have the millions of dollars to try to maintain the seat compared to the Republicans who were sitting on a hefty $4 million account. Some of the impacts of that compressed time frame also didn't give me the time and ability to try to assist with the voter turnout. So with the compressed time frame, mind you, I was campaigning pregnant. By the time they gave us a map, because it was still unconstitutional, I literally gave birth before we get a constitutional map. So I was pregnant the entire process too. And I was in committee too, fighting for good constitutional maps, because the first congressional maps actually landed on one of my committees where I served as the ranking member at the local government elections committee. By the time we got these maps to work on, I had to go on leave. So at the end of July, which was when I got a semi-okay to go ahead and start doing some physical activity, is when we just hit the ground running. And essentially the whole time I was hitting the ground running, I also had to make time to fundraise. I essentially fundraised every single week throughout all the months, whether that be emails, call time, whatever the case may be, like trying to reach out to outside donors. I constantly had to fundraise every second, and which was a great support from the Matriots to help uplift some of that or alleviate some of those issues with fundraising. But then there was also messaging to these new set of voters. Essentially what they did was take out 4% of the Democratic vote, which was also my hometown of Whitehall, and gave me more of a red city of Grove City. They took out the Columbus precincts as well. So I had to figure out, how am I going to message to these new people? How am I going to meet these new people? But overall, the theme that I often run into was turnout. Columbus did not turn out as much as we expected them to be. I had 20,000 voter drop off compared to 2018. 2018, I won by 705 votes. And now in 2022, we had a lot of odds stacked up against us, but the numbers are still coming in. I'm pretty confident that I'll probably end up walking away with at least 49% votes after all the absentees and remaining provisionals come in, but it was all on turnout. Money does not buy votes. It definitely helps us contact voters, but it needed a new message for the redistricting process. People were burnt out. People didn't understand what the process was. All they knew was there's President Biden who is going to be up, but then I oftentimes got confused with people. People kept thinking I'm running for U.S. Senate. I kept telling them no, no, no. So it was turnout. And I want to thank the Matriots for your support as a group, and also all the individuals too who reached out throughout the whole campaign, asked me, where do you want me at? What do you want me to do for your race?
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Senator Maharath. And I just want to, at this point, just note that with some of our endorsed candidates, I've continued to use the official term of the office that they ran for, because I want to be very intentional in putting it out in the universe that we applaud your race and that we look forward to you running again in the future. And so I want to just acknowledge as the moderator that intentionality and respect that I am giving each and every one of you, because again, you all ran tremendous races. And as the Matriots, we will continue to support candidates like yourself, that we again increase the numbers of elected women throughout the state of Ohio. And so as we move to our next candidate, Representative Conrath, we're going to keep that tradition with you because we see great things happening in your future as well. You decided to run for office in response to redistricting challenges, in response to the community swelling of engagement. People wanted someone who would represent them. However, you faced an additional challenge of actually getting your name on the ballot. Can you share a little bit about why was there a challenge to actually get your name on the ballot?
Yeah, thank you, Tina. I'm in Southeast Ohio, so it's Ohio 94, and we have 4 counties. And sorry for the frog in my throat. I decided to get sick a couple days ago. I'm sure it's the letdown from all of the stress of running this race. But so we have 4 counties in a rural area. And after the August 2nd primary, which I was not a part of, the Democratic candidate withdrew from the race. And so statutorily, the party has the ability to nominate someone else to step in to replace that candidate who withdrew. So I was just angry enough and energized enough when they came to me and asked if I would be what's called the replacement candidate and represent the Democratic Party. And I was angry and energized about all of the extremist policies that were coming out of the State House. I was angry and energized about Roe versus Wade being overturned. And so I decided to throw my hat in the race. And mind you, this was against a 3-term incumbent, Jay Edwards. And I knew it was an uphill battle. But I also felt like the right thing to do was to make sure that we had a choice for people in Southeast Ohio, a choice of candidates. So we dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and took my nomination to our Board of Elections in Athens County for them to put me on the ballot. Well, after an hour-and-a-half long meeting, for which my opponent had brought down an attorney from Columbus, who's an election law attorney, the 2 Republicans on the Board of Elections voted to keep me off of the ballot, and the 2 Democrats on the Board of Elections voted to put me on the ballot. And for those of you, I've learned a lot about Board of Elections and how they work. So it ended up in a 2-2 tie about whether I would get on the ballot or not. A tie goes to the Secretary of State to break. So that got sent up to Frank LaRose. And after weeks of him sitting on that decision, he, not surprisingly, ended up siding with the Republicans and voted to keep me off of the ballot. So we are now, well into September, and And right now, at that point, then I'm not on the ballot. So I had one option. Actually, I had two options. I could quit and throw in the towel, or I could sue Frank LaRose, our Secretary of State, in the Ohio Supreme Court for a writ of mandamus, which compels a government official to do their job. So long story short, thanks to Justice Brunner and 3 of her colleagues, on Tuesday, October 11th, which some of you may have known that early voting started on Wednesday, October 12th. On Tuesday, October 11th, the Supreme Court ruled in my favor and officially put me on the ballot. So we had a month of being on the ballot to stand up a campaign. And we had been pretending since August that I was going to be on the ballot, but we had amazing community support. In fact, I saw the Quinns are on this call, who are 2 of my biggest supporters, as well as my mom, I think, is on this call somewhere too. And we were able to raise $100,000 in that very short period of time. My opponent, however, had $1.1 million to spend, and boy, did he spend it. He bought football tickets to all the high school kids to get into all the high school games for free in our 4 counties. He bought every pig, cow, and pie at the county fairs. So he had a lot of money. He had a lot of money to spend and a lot of name recognition. But and I also had the same issue, I think, as one of the other candidates, talking about no union support. The fact that I got into this race so late made it very hard for unions to back me, even though I'm clearly the candidate that unions would want to support. And I think that's one reason I was so grateful to the Matriots for their monetary donation and their support from the get-go, because I had no other PAC money other than the Matriots. I had no union money. I had nothing. So we had ended up with over 400 donors, to my campaign in a very short amount of time. So yeah, that was my obstacle to getting on the ballot. And I ended up winning Athens County handily, but ended up losing in the other 3 counties. And actually it was fun. I got to see Justice Brunner in 2 of those counties on her justice tour. We met up in Meigs County and also in Morgan County, which are 2 very rural areas. So yeah, I guess I want to say thank you to Emily. Emily called me out of the blue one day just to give me support, which I really appreciated. And Kim has been an amazing support system, sending emails to me. I hope you win. What do you need? How can we help you? So really the Matriots has been just an incredible organization to be affiliated with. And I appreciate everything that you have done, as well as Lead Ohio. I was part of a women's circle, which Rachel was part of my group. So I think anytime that we can come together as women with shared values and support each other, it just empowers all of us. It was great to be able to ask questions, which as a first-time candidate, to women where I felt like I was safe to ask things that might have seemed dumb in a different group. So yeah, I guess that's it. When they ruled against Frank LaRose, they put up one of my favorite lines, Justice Brunner, is that he acted in clear disregard of his legal duty. So that felt good. And it's another reason to keep fighting, right? I mean, sometimes we want to throw in the towel and be done. It seems like the system is so rigged against us. But I'm glad I didn't, and I'm glad we fought, and I'm glad to have the Matriots support. And, we live to fight another day. So
what a tremendous, I just have to tell you that that's tremendous, right? Because the hope that you're showing in your response is that hope that we need to give, the reflection that you each have given to your races and to your campaigns, and sharing the specific information and tips that are helping the women on this Zoom right now that are deciding if they want to run in the upcoming election and who they're going to support in these upcoming elections is just tremendously impactful. So thank you for sharing these remarks, and again, helping to fuel the hope and to rejuvenate the energy that we are going to need to continue to encourage women to get out there and run, to be leaders in our community, to carry torches and advance those courageous conversations that need to be had. Our next candidate is one of those courageous voices, Dr. Somani. As a candidate for an open seat, you had to overcome some really tactical challenges to not just craft out that voter community for you, that engaged voter, but also to build that name recognition, to get your name on the ballot. So if you could just share a little bit about how you overcame some of those tactical challenges during your campaign.
Yeah, I had some of the same issues that some of the other candidates have mentioned with redistricting. So honestly, I don't know if anybody else talked about the fact that the Ohio Democratic Party, the Franklin County Democratic Party, actually sued to get 6 of us on the ballot because the initial Secretary of State response was, you didn't apply to be on the ballot in March for May, so you can't be on in August. So my campaign started the day that Roe v. Wade was overruled, the same day that the Ohio Supreme Court said, absolutely, the 6 of you filed your papers in a timely fashion. And again, thank you, Justice Brunner, because without her, without Justice Maureen O'Connor, I'm sure that would have gone a different way. So June 24th, Roe v. Wade gets overturned in the morning, and I find out as an OBGYN that everybody is just falling apart. I'm getting text messages all day, and then finally get the call from Allison Rousseau about my race. So we were fortunate. I had Dr. Beth Liston, and Allison Rousseau, who were amazing at helping me just put together a campaign in a short period of time. I've lived in this district for 30 years. When we started canvassing, a lot of the volunteers started hearing that, oh, Dr. Somani delivered my baby, Dr. Somani did my surgery. So I was fortunate to have, at least from a medical standpoint, a lot of name recognition, and it just got translated into the political field. My candidate was known because he's been on Hilliard City Council and has run for other offices. But what I learned was oftentimes people didn't really want to know about me. They just wanted to know that I wasn't him. So that was interesting because I had several people who would ask, are you Democrat or Republican? And then they'd find out and they were like, who's your opponent? And as soon as I would tell them, they're like, oh, well, we're going to vote for you. We don't like him. So that was strange too. But I think that, the Matriots support, I had support from the Welcome PAC, which is trying to help across the country get more moderate bipartisan candidates. I think my background as an OBGYN really helped because of Roe v. Wade. It was one of those things where people were like, oh yeah, we need a doctor in the house. We need someone like you down there. So it's kind of following the chat and everything. We did a lot of postcards. We did a lot of mailers. We had people writing postcards. We had 15,000 people canvass, and we had a 17% answer rate, which is higher than normal when it comes to canvassing. And I think some of it was I learned after my first bout that me standing in front of the Ring camera helps a lot. So if you're going to canvass, stand in front of the camera with, at least something to identify yourself as the candidate, or if you're canvassing and you just, can be there. We did not do as many. We also had a limited budget, so we didn't do as much in terms of texting and calling and, digital media, but we did a fair amount. So I was super excited that the margin we won by was reflective probably of our district too, with 20% Asians, with a pretty well-educated district, with a lot of women in the district that we targeted. That was the take, that was sort of the focus that we had when we were running.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Our last couple of responses, and I was here trying to write it, just really resonates with the fact that our collective work is really is the will, right? Is the power to transform our communities through increased efforts in civic education, voter engagement and turnout, and of course, as I've repeated numerous times here, increasing the number of elected women that are here in the state of Ohio. As we come to our last panelist, I want to encourage all of our attendees to continue to use the chat box, put those last questions in there. Our panelists I see are responding to those questions. They are thoroughly engaged in the chat box, so please continue to do that. This collective willpower to create transformative change shines through each and every day, each policy, even every social media post that this last panelist does. I tell you, every day I wake up and there's an affirmation or there's something going on with President Crawley. So President Crawley, how did the appointment process position you to be successful in your reelection to the Franklin County Commission?
Thank you so much for the question, Dr. Pierce. And I just want to say thank you to the Matriots in general. As it was noted earlier, this was my third time being endorsed. And so just truly grateful to have the support and the financial support. I know someone was saying how they didn't have support from unions, and I got support from unions. I got letters, but the money did not come in until later on. And having to get my name out countywide, having money early so you can keep hitting, voters makes a huge difference. So again, I am truly, truly grateful. I think coming in and in the middle of my predecessor's term allowed me to really just come in and hit the ground running. I knew that I was going to have about 16 months to try to get my message out, like that I'm here. I mean, business, I'm here to do the work. People knew me from the 26th House District, but trying to, have that reverberate over a county of 1.35 million people, it takes something. And so being appointed and doing some really transformational work on the board with my child care initiative, Franklin County Rise, and then our workforce development programs allowed me to get a lot of earned media that played to my advantage. So, people see me on TV a lot. They saw me in the paper, in the dispatch, or I was always speaking about those things really helped. So then when it was time to launch my campaign around January or February, I had a lot of earned media. I hired someone to do my social media, Dr. Pierce, which is why you see all those posts. I had to pay somebody because I was like, this is too much for me, but a worthwhile investment because we're always looking at the insights. What is our reach? What is our engagement? What are people interested in knowing? And you might have seen what the series, What Does a County Commissioner Do? We started that during the campaign and we have just launched it again after, but that's what people wanted to know. People get engaged on those posts because I was talking about the work that we are doing and how it's making true change for the people. And so I think if I had to start from scratch and not be an incumbent, it really would have been an uphill battle. My opponent, Louise Gill, had ran against Commissioner O'Grady 2 years ago, and he has been out in the community. He was very active all over. And so it wasn't just a given, like, oh, we live in a Democratic county, you don't have to work hard. I earned every single vote that I was able to get. But I couldn't do it by myself. So all of the folks who wrote postcards for me, who are on this call or just supported me, that made a difference. House parties, I did more house parties than I ever have. And I love them. And my team and I are like, okay, how can we start doing that again in January and February? Not because I'm on the ballot, because people just care about the work that we're doing. And then they go share that. Right. And then, of course, door knocking. And then we did digital ads. So outside of my social media, digital ads, we spent a lot of money in that space, probably around a little more than close to $60,000 just on digital ads, talking about the things that I've been able to champion just at the Board of Commissioners. But again, I probably wouldn't be successful or as successful as I was able to be last week had I not had that launch pad and that early runway from being an incumbent. But it definitely was a Herculean effort. And I thank everyone on this call who was supportive of me and continue to support me.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your responses. I will just echo what I continue to see in the chat box. This has been an inspirational evening. It looks like people are fired up, reinvigorated, ready to go. And as we heard today, it's on. It is on. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily to continue to tell us how we can continue to keep this momentum going through the Matriots.
That was incredibly inspiring. Each of the different issues that our candidates overcome in a normal year was amplified this year by some of the real challenges that we heard. And, I wrote down some of the common themes. I saw some of you in the chat also writing down common themes, like what about civics education? What about voter turnout? What about redistricting? What about voter fatigue or some of the issues around not knowing who to vote for? And I've also heard, at least ancillarily, that there's a concern about having something, not just someone, on the ballot that you care about. And at least from my perspective, as I looked at the ballot initiatives this year, it appeared to me that people didn't necessarily understand what those ballot initiatives were, the two issues, issue 1 and issue 2, that were on their ballot. And so it wasn't necessarily something that would drive them out to vote, as we saw that it was in other states where people went to the polls specifically because of potential initiatives and then considered the candidates that they wanted to vote for alongside those initiatives. So we have some significant work to do to get people out to vote. And that leads us to think about 2023. I know that you all are like, whoa, Emily, it's been, 9 days. Can we still keep focusing on 20? Can we celebrate 2022? Can we live into a little bit of keeping the status quo? Can we celebrate these candidates? Can we mourn a little bit if we need to? And I am here to tell you, we've got eyes on the prize for 2023. What I need you to do today, my Rita put in the chat for us, always incredibly helpful, that we need monetary support to start investing in our campaigns for next year. As Kim, thank you, Kim. She's flipping between the two different screens that we have here. I'm going to stick on this one that says 2023, encourage a woman to run. Next year, there are 7,334 offices up for election. Thank you to Kim and Madeline for locating those. We know that they're going to be really local races. These candidates are going to need your support significantly. As a volunteer in the community, they need to be encouraged to run. We have city mayors, auditors, treasurers, council members. Some portion of your council, maybe even half of your council, is up for election next year. Local school board, and we're hearing buzz already about lots of money being pushed towards local school board races, outside interests in local school board races, township trustees, fiscal officers for townships as well, village mayors, managers, council members, and municipal court judges. And so there is a lot happening at the very local level. And we know that all politics are local, right? So encouraging a woman to run, my guess is one of the things that you'll hear, which is something that I've heard over the last few weeks as I've talked to women about running for next year, is I would love to be on school board. I would do it in a heartbeat, but I don't want to campaign. I don't want to be part of the campaign process. And that is where you can really encourage a woman, that you're there to support her during that time. And we'll be here to support those candidates who share our values with monetary support. Kim, can you flip to the other slide for me, please? Perfect. And so the ways in which you can really help us, and your friends can help us, is that we can endorse, encourage, and amplify. She needs all the support you can give. So We have multi-year pledges here at the Matriots. This should not come as a surprise to anybody on the call. And those multi-year pledges allow us to plan in the out years. So those pledges from 2020 are still helping us think about 2023. And my mind is, I know, like I said, we're thinking about this past week, but really my mind is on 2023, and then everybody breathe, 2024. And so if you could renew your multi-year pledge, that would be incredibly significant in the work that we're doing. If you feel so drawn to it, we could use an increase in the level of support that will allow us to invest. My hope, I'll tell you all on this call, my hope is to invest in 200 races next year. We did 61 this year. I don't know if it's going to happen, and it sounds like a lot of work, but I would love to be able to support women across the state in this way. Volunteer on a committee. We have a number of committees that support the work that we do, dedicated volunteers. I've seen many of them here tonight, from our endorsement committee, from our research committee, from our finance committee, from our governance committee, and from our board itself. And so I can't thank all of you enough for the work that you do to make what we do happen. And I think some of them probably gasped on their drink when I said how many people we want to endorse next year, because that's going to increase the level of volunteer commitment for us. So think about a volunteer commitment for us. Host a house party. I see some chat notes. I'll host a house party. We would love to have you host a house party. I will come to your house party. Abby will come to your house party. We travel around the state, and we'll come and talk with folks about why it is so critical that we work to promote women who share our values in our communities. Share her campaign with your network, not just on social media, but across all different kinds of methods. Nan Whaley would tell me, you got to tell 5 people who you normally don't talk to about politics about this race. So think of ways that you can engage in your community in that way, and then also give directly to her campaign. We help diversify your portfolio of giving for candidates, but we also help amplify your gift, right? So if you give directly, we still give to that candidate too. And that is a way in which we are all able to help. We got some important dates here on the right-hand side. Somebody was asking, how can I make sure that my candidate we can encourage candidates and know that they're going to be running. There are some deadlines coming up. They're going to have to get signatures to be on the ballot. So February 1st is not that far away. We've got a holiday next week. Then we've got a few holidays towards the end of December, and it'll be February 1st before we know it. And so we hope that you are able to encourage others during this time. Here, Kim, you can stop sharing for me, please. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna go back to my gallery view so that I can see all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much for the support that you gave to our candidates this year, for the dedication that you have to changing what Ohio looks like, for running for office, whether you won or you didn't win, for supporting a candidate, for encouraging her to run, for being there and having a conversation with somebody who you maybe don't really like very much about why it matters to do what we do. Thank you for promoting each other and for creating a world that we want to live in, right? And that we can raise our kids in. And thank you so much for my co-panelists this evening, for Justice Jennifer Brunner, for Rachel Baker, Representative Baker, right? For Troy Greenfield, for Rep Miranda, for Senator Maharath, for Tonya Conrath, for newly elected Rep Anita Somani, and for Commissioner President Crawley. Thank you for being here with us this evening. You give us such wind into 2023. You make us so happy that we were here to support you, and we will be here for the next round of candidates. Stay tuned for all the things that we have coming up, y'all. We have a lot planned. We have a lot planned, but that's because we have a lot to do. So stay with us. I appreciate all of you. Cheers to 2022. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.